Map's not complete. It's just a piece. Ever since Luke disappeared, people have been looking for him.
Why did he leave?
He was training a new generation of Jedi. One boy, an apprentice, turned against him and destroyed it all. Luke felt responsible. He just walked away from everything.
Do you know what happened to him?
A lot of rumors, stories. People that knew him best think he went looking for the first Jedi temple.
The Jedi were real.
I used to wonder about that myself. Thought it was a bunch of mumbo-jumbo. A magical power holding together good and evil, the dark side and the light. The crazy thing is, it's true. The Force, the Jedi. All of it. It's all true.
So we've been studying the life of a crazy family. One of the things people have told me is that after looking at this, they said, man, I thought my family was dysfunctional. This family is insane. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. The thing you should be encouraged by is if God can use this family to change the world, to make a difference, God can use you to make that same difference, to have that kind of impact. In our story, we learned that Abraham had a son named Isaac. Isaac ended up getting a wife named Rebecca. And Rebecca, after 20 years, got pregnant. She feels this turmoil going on in her stomach. And, of course, back then, you didn't know if you were going to have twins or not. And there was just this fighting. She inquires of the Lord, and the Lord says, you've got twins. Good news. Bad news is what they're doing right now is only the beginning. Because out of these two individuals will be two nations. And she said the unique thing is going to be, or God told her the unique thing that's going to be is the older one will actually end up serving the younger one, which was just very unique. And she clung to that promise. And so we looked at the birthright, the Esau giving the birthright over to Jacob because he just despised it. He thought it was a bunch of mumbo-jumbo. He thought it was nothing to it. And then we looked at God's tangible hand on Isaac a little bit later in chapter 26. Last week we looked at 27. I think it was last week. Man, it's just like last week we looked at 27 and the whole deception that went on. The whole thing that people weren't talking to other people. That the family should have been pulled into a room for a big counseling session, and instead everybody was manipulating things. In fact, our scene today opens, and the reason it opens is because Esau, because of what had happened, because of the deception Jacob had pulled on Isaac, their father, Esau says, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill my brother. That was nothing new. I mean, Cain and Abel, killing had happened. Brothers had fought against each other. And Esau said, but in honor of my dad, Isaac, I'm going to wait till my dad passes away, and then I'll kill him. Well, Rebecca gets word of this, and she says, Jacob has got to leave just for a little while until Esau calms down. But she can't go and put her nose in. Look, her nose is in it up to here, but Isaac doesn't know that. So she goes and she tells Isaac, she says, these women, these wives of Esau, they're driving me crazy. What good do I have to even live? Life isn't even worth living if I'm going to have this type of daughter-in-law. And so she says to Isaac, is Jacob going to marry a woman like this? And she allows it to be Isaac's idea. She allows Isaac to come up with the idea. It's very interesting. There's a great scene in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and where the woman says, yes, it is true, the man is the head of the house, but the woman is the neck, and that controls the head. And that's exactly what Rebecca's doing. She is putting the pieces of the puzzle in place to where Isaac thinks, hey, I got an idea. Let's send Jacob to get a wife. That's what my dad did for me, but he sent Eleazar, the servant. But let's send Jacob back to your family, back to your brother and back to your family, and let him pick a wife there. And Rebecca says, gee, I never would have thought of such a thing. And so it says that when Esau heard this, he said, oh, that's the problem. My parents don't like the two wives I've had, the Canaanite wives. Okay, I'll marry one of my uncle's daughters, Ishmael. And I think I said something on the podcast. It's kind of like you have a pit bull that's biting people and all. And people say, man, that dog's dangerous. That dog, you got to stay away from that dog. And instead of dealing with the dog, you say, oh, they don't like that dog. Well, let me get a Chihuahua. Let me get another. They haven't dealt with the issue. And so that's where our text picks up. And there's some things I want to talk about as we go through this. But here's the main reason for this passage of Scripture. Jacob is leaving the land. And if you remember, Isaac, when he blessed him the second time, the non-deceptive time, he talked about the land. You're going to have the land. Well, but you're leaving the land. And so the question is, does God's promises, do they extend to him even when he's out of the land? And more specifically, how much is Jacob buying into this? I mean, he's heard the story about his grandfather coming out and the Lord saying, look at the stars, count them. That's going to be your descendants. You're going to have so many descendants, it's going to be like the stars in the skies if you can count them all. And then they didn't have any kids. And Sarah's old in age and he's old in age. And they're trying to figure this out. They're trying to help God. And he said, no. I'm going to do something miraculous. I'm going to give you a child, and it's going to be the child of promise. And it was Jacob's father, Isaac. And he gave that promise to Isaac as well. He says, I'm going to do something miraculous through this family. And so that's where we pick up. And let's go to the text. Jacob left Beersheba. Remember Beersheba? I showed you some pictures of there that I took in 2016 and 2017. He left Beersheba and set out for Haran. Now, what is Jacob's mindset here? Just use your imagination. He's running. He's fleeing. What's his motivation? To get out of the way of my brother. My brother wants to kill me. I have stolen not only his he gave me his birthright. He sold it for a bowl of soup. But I have deceived my father and I've gotten the blessing. And he's upset. So I just need to give him some time to cool off. So as Jacob is leaving, he's looking back because he says, I just got to get out of here. And that's all he's concentrating on. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Why is he stopping? Because the sun is set. You know, when you plan out a trip and you say, well, I think we can make it from here to Greensboro in about, an hour, and you have this anticipation. Back then, you really didn't travel alone. Jacob is traveling alone. Back then, you just didn't stop anywhere. And so you kind of planned, look, we've got to get to a certain place by sundown, because you didn't want to be out there in the dark. But what the text indicates here is that the reason he is stopping at this place, whatever this place is because the sun set. He wasn't expecting it. It wasn't in his plans. The AAA day tripper that he got did not have that place on there. So the reason he stopped, completely unexpected, is because the sun had set. Wow, I thought we would make better time than that. I'm by myself. I thought I would be further along down the road. But he stops at this certain place. And the reason he does is because it felt like the day had shortened. He didn't get as far as he had hoped to get. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and laid down to sleep. So he doesn't have a pillow. And really what's going on here is there's certain stones, and it looks like he's kind of putting them around his head. But he had a dream in which he saw a stairway or a ladder resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven. And the angel of God angels of God, were ascending and descending on it. A couple of things to unpack here. I couldn't find any translation that brings this out, but essentially it is thought from the Jewish side of things that this ladder or this stairway extends from heaven. The direction of it is from heaven. Remember, God is always pursuing us. God is always bending towards reaching us because He knows we cannot reach Him. That's completely different from all the other religions. The other religions say man tries to figure out, how can I get to God? What can I do? What work can I do? How can I climb? How can I be good enough to reach God? But that's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches is that God extends His way to heaven. He initiates. He moves first. And that's exactly what Jacob is seeing here in this dream. He says its top reaches the heaven, comes down to heaven, and it touches on the earth, or it rests on the earth. And the angels of God are ascending and descending. Now just think about this with me for a second. The angels of God are leaving and they're coming. They're ascending into heaven and then they're leaving. It's interesting. John chapter 1, I think it's verse 51. It's the very last verse. Jesus makes a prediction to Nathanael, say, you will see the Son of Man and the angels ascending and descending. But think about when you ascend, and this actually comes into play 20 years later in our story. What's going on here is coming into play. But think about ascending, they're going up the ladder, and then they're coming down the ladder. Well, if they're going, think about a stairwell. You know, sometimes when you have to stop at the top of the stairs while people come up. You know, if you're on a narrow stair and you both can't come at the same time. What it appears is going on here is that the angels at the top of the stairwell in heaven are waiting, because it says, and the angels of God were ascending. They were going up. They were leaving. And then the angels were coming down, descending. And there's this gap of time in this realm, in this place that Jacob is. These are unseen forces at work. And there's this gap of time where the angels have ascended, but the other ones hadn't come down quite yet. And the Jewish thought on this is to me fascinating. And I heard a Jewish professor say this. He said, think about the difference. Now, okay, we know better now, but use your imagination. What if there was an agency whose job was to conduct operations only on foreign soil? We don't have that anymore, but we'd call them maybe the CIA. Maybe, I don't know. But and then what if there was an agency whose job was only to conduct operations on native soil? We might give that the name FBI. You know, again, none of that applies today, but just use your imagination with me. And the way the Jewish thought is here is that there are angels, and I'm going to tell you something else the Jewish thinks a little bit later, but that there are angels that kind of are over the land of Israel. Well, where's Jacob going? Jacob is leaving angels. Jacob is leaving Israel. He's leaving the land that's been promised. And so the Jewish mindset is there's a shift change here. That there are angels leaving. Okay, the FBI is leaving, now the CIA is coming in. Their job is on foreign soil. But through all of this, there's something else that's happening. It's like this opening now. For a moment, Jacob been protected because the angels have left and the angels have yet to descend, as it were. This is a Jewish mindset, a Jewish thinking. And he goes on and he says this. Wait, back up one more second. I want to show you one other thing here. Where it says, and the angels of God were ascending and descending. I don't know why, but the NIV, the New American Standard, they just leave this word untranslated. There are 3 times in this passage where it says, behold. It's like, behold, and the angels of God were ascending. It's like, wait, and he says it 3 times, and it's like, whoa, I didn't expect that. I mean, it's one thing to have this dream. It's one thing to see a stairway in a dream, but behold, and the angels of God, your Revised Standard Version, which is a much more liberal translation, gets it right here. And they said, but behold, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Wow. There was this, it just kind of caught his attention. And he goes on and he says, there above it stood the Lord. And this word can be translated either way. It can be the Lord was standing above it, or the Lord was standing beside him. And different translations will do it different ways. And he said, behold. Behold should be right there again. Behold, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. Now, when we read that, we should go, wait, time out. I thought Isaac was Jacob's dad. But here, the Lord is saying that Abraham is Jacob's dad. I'm the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. What he's doing here is he says, the promises that I made to Abraham. Now remember, everything Jacob has up to this point is his mom has told him, God revealed to me while I was pregnant with you, that he's going to do great things through you. He's going to bless you. You're special. Now, get in there and fix that suit. God's going to do great things for you. Now, put this goat skin on. Deceive your dad. God's going to... Mom, you know, it's a faith that's been told about, but it's not a faith that's been experienced. And now the Lord said, behold, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. And he's sitting there saying, wait, what in the world is happening? All the things I've been told. All the things that the vision that's been cast, that's told about our family. Whoa, what? Let me just catch up here. He said, I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. I'm going to give them the land. Now he's talking about the land. But I'm leaving the land, but I'm going to give you this land. The land's important. You know, the land was important nearly 6,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. The land's important today to the Jew. The land is very important. He says, I will give you and your descendants the land upon which you were lying upon. And if you read, there was an old commentator, a Jewish commentator that wrote back in the 1800s, 1870s, 1880s. And he said this. He said, in that moment, remember, when you're lying down, I'm about 6 foot, and you need about 2 foot wide space. Of course, sometimes when I'm sleeping with Gail, I need like about a foot space, you know, but you need about 2 foot space. So you need about 12 square foot, right? If I did my math correct. Bobby will tell me if I did my math correct. And the Jewish rabbis say that all of Israel in that moment was wrapped up and put under him, so that Jacob was sleeping on all of Israel. And he says, the land upon which you're lying. I don't believe that. Okay, I don't think we have to be that technical. I will give you your descendants the land upon which you're lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth. Now, the word that should be, and the reason they use dust is because how can you count dust? It's just dust. It's so fine. It's so much of it. But it's really dirt. You can't grow anything in dust. You can grow something in dirt. Your descendants will be like the dirt of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and the east, to the north and to the south. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. Wait, I got to tell you, God, right now it doesn't feel like anybody's going to be blessed because I'm running. I'm leaving. I am being pursued, if not momentarily, and as soon as my dad dies, I'm being pursued by my brother. And he's promised to kill me. Now, Mom says, look, just go away for a little while till he calms down, cools down. Everything will be all right. He's got 3 wives he's got to deal with. He won't have any time for you. This doesn't say that in the text, but that's essentially what they're trying to work out here. But God's saying, I'm going to do this. I will do this. He says, and behold, I am with you. Underline it. I'm with you. The angels have left. The other angels are coming. But because of your special mission, because of your special purpose, I'm with you. And I'll watch over you. I'll protect you. You think Jacob is nervous about where he's going? It's not like, Disney World where he's seeing pictures and anticipating. He doesn't know where he's going. He's got fear. He's got apprehensions. And God appears to him. He says, I'm with you. I'm going to be with you. He says, and I'm going to watch over you. I'm going to protect you wherever you go. Now, wait a minute, Rod. I know there are times, God promises me that He'll watch over me. God promises He'll protect me. But I was in a car wreck. God didn't protect me there. I had this happen to me. I got sick, and God didn't protect me. How can Jacob believe it? Here's what you can count on. You can count on God honoring His promises. I think Dennis Prager says this. He says, you can count on two things: that God will honor His promises, God will stay true to His promises, and God will bring justice, ultimate justice, in the afterlife. You can count on that. But just imagine if you're Jacob, and the God of the universe says, I'm with you, and I'm going to protect you. I'm going to watch over you. Wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. You're going, and you think you're going for a couple of weeks. But however long you're out of the land, I'm going to bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I've done what I've promised you. Wow. This is what Jacob experiences in a dream. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. I hadn't planned to stop here. It was not on my itinerary, and yet God shows up. And I wasn't even aware of it. There was no signs that say God's place right here. It just seemed like an ordinary place. It just seemed like a regular place, and yet the Lord is in this place. He was afraid, or he was in awe, and he said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. He thought about this place, this moment, this tangible place as the house of God and the gate of heaven. And he put it that way. What has God given us that's tangible, that reminds us of what He's done? Well, we'll be celebrating that at the end of this month. It's those tangible elements of bread and wine, something tangible to remind us of what He's done on Calvary's cross for us. So he awakes, he's kind of like, he wakes and he kind of pinches himself. Wow, I didn't even realize that this is the house of the Lord. This is the gate of heaven. And he says, early the next morning, he got up. Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head, and he set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. One of the things you'll see when you're driving around in Israel, you'll see these stones stacked weirdly on top of each other. And, I don't know how they do that, because I got to tell you, if me and my brother at 13 years of age saw a thing of stones like that, it would be like, maybe there's not a sign on it, but we know the intention. Come knock this down. But you don't do that. When you see stones stacked, to this day in Israel, there's something going on. It's a memorial. And that's what he's doing. He's stacking these stones up as a memorial to remember, because it's so easy to forget. And he poured oil on top of it. And he called the place Bethel. Bethel means the house of God. God, Beth, the house of God. Though the city used to be called Luz. Now he goes on. Then Jacob made a vow, and we got to work this vow just a little bit. Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me. What had God just told Jacob? I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be with you. And will watch over me on this journey I'm taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to provide for you, so that I return safely to my father's household. Well, he didn't necessarily say that. What did God promise? I'm going to return you to the land. And Jacob here is saying, wait, if God is going to do this, he's going to watch over me, provide for me, protect me, give me food to eat and clothes to wear, and that and really, so that it should be and, because he says and, really throughout this. And that I return safely to my father's household, and not then it should be, and the Lord will be my God. See, you got God doing all this stuff. Jacob is realizing, wait, God's going to act. God will be with me. God will watch over me. God will provide food for me to eat. God will provide clothes to wear. God will allow me to return safely to my father's house. God, the Lord, will be my God. Then, the stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. Now, a lot of times we think about things like this. We think, okay, wait a minute. Jacob is making a deal here with God. God, if you do this, I'll do this. God, if you will protect me, if you'll watch over with me, if you'll be with me, if you'll return me to this land, then I'm going to do this. But that's not what's going on. What if God doesn't do any of that? What if God doesn't watch over him? What if God isn't with him? What if God doesn't feed him? What if God doesn't clothe him? What if God doesn't return him safely to his father's household? He'll be dead. The mindset that's going on here is God's already promised these things. In the dream, he promised these things. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to watch over you. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to bring you to this land. He's already promised this. And Jacob here is saying, okay, God, if you're going to do that, then I have faith that I'm coming back here. And if I come back here, if I end up back here, the only explanation that I am back here is that you've done what you promised you would do. And if I find myself back here, then I'll remember that this is the place of God's house, and I will give you a tenth. Now, who's he going to give it to? There's no priestly system that's been set up here. And what he's saying there is, I realize that every step I make when I come back here is because you've been so, so good to me. I realize that the one thing that I could never doubt is your love for me. I realize that. And I will structure my life in such a way as it'll be a constant remember that God has been with me every step of the way. Remember, he's leaving the land. He's got all kinds of doubts. Yeah, Granddad and Dad talked about how God was going to use our family, but all I see in front of me is I've got to run. I've got to run. I've got to run. God says, not so quick. You need to know that all the things they told you, it's true. It's really true. And for you to understand that, I'm going to open heaven up for you to see what's going on in the unseen realm. And I'm going to be with you. And I'm going to protect you. And I'm going to provide for you. And your life will be changed from that moment. And there's going to be times where you're going to be in that other land and you're going to wonder, why can't I get back? And you're going to wonder, why am I being so mistreated? We'll see that next week. Why are people so mean to me? And what's he hanging to? God's promises. God's promises. And when he comes back, we'll see in a couple of weeks, when he steps back into the land, he will realize the only explanation that I am here right now has to be that God's hand was on me. God's protection was with me. And I'm going to structure my life to make sure that I never, ever forget. So he moves on. And I want you to see just the first verse of what happens in the next chapter. These chapter divisions weren't in there. These numbers weren't in there. Then Jacob continued on his journey. Literally, it says this in Hebrew. Jacob lifted his feet. It's like now Jacob is moving with purpose. Now he's been given the promises of God's presence and God's protection and God's provision. Now Jacob is moving with purpose. Why? Well, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you if you knew that God was going to go with you? That even though you were going to leave everything that's familiar, what was going to be unfamiliar was going to be in the presence and provision and protection of Almighty God. Jacob lifted his feet and he came to the land of eastern peoples. What an adventure. The next 20 years is going to be an adventure. It's going to shape the way Jacob thinks about himself, the way Jacob thinks about his calling. It's going to shape everything. The things he's done to other people, the things he thought were small little things that he's done to others, he's going to have done to him. And they're not going to be so small. They're not going to be so funny. And he's going to have to rely on that vision, that thing that happened at Bethel. He's going to have to remember, because it would be so easy to forget. It's so easy just to go on and live life and live it like you completely forgot what God's done. But God in His graciousness has stepped into Jacob's life and He's encouraged him to take that next step on the adventure of a lifetime. And He's promised him He's going to bring him back. I think God's done that for us. God gave a tangible expression of His love, and He reminds us of it. He reminds us in the bread and the wine that we take when we remember His death. He promises He will be with us. He said this to His disciples. He says, "And lo, all authority is given to me in heaven and on earth. Lo, I am with you always. Go into the world and make disciples." He's promised to be with us. And He will fulfill that promise. And we can count on it. I titled this sermon, "The Promise of Presence." Because those times when you feel like Jacob, those times when you feel out of sync, those times when you feel like, wow, this is not the script I would have written for my life. God, why am I in this play? Let me have somebody else's play. Let me have somebody else's part. I think Scotty Scheffler probably thought that on Friday morning when the police officer was putting handcuffs on him. He's going, what is going on here? Well, you've been there. You've been there where you thought you had this whole thing planned out and it all went sideways. But if you're old enough, you've lived enough to where you've come to a point where you look back and you said, wow, even God used that. Even God used that I would not have planned, that I would not have scripted. And that's made my life more colorful. It's made my life more fuller. God's promises are something that we can hang on to. His presence is something that He's guaranteed us. I am with you always, even until the end of the earth. So the earth is going to end, and He's going to be still right there with us. Let's stand together. Father, I pray that we would recognize how you used this family to affect the whole world. Your promises have proven true time and time again. Thank you that you encouraged Jacob by opening that which was unseen to be seen by him. You gave him the encouragement he needed in that moment to be able to look what was ahead of him and to be able to, with confidence, take that next step. Father, he inherits a land and we inherit a life because of what Christ has done for us. He so arranged his life based on those promises. I pray that we would continue to grow and rearrange our lives to be pleasing to you in everything we say and everything we do. Thank you for the promise of your presence in our life as it was in his. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.